My name is Jack, and I live in the bustling and noisy city of New York. My wife, Ellie, is a unique and charming sight in this city. Ellie has long hair that shines like the golden sun, waist length, and whenever the breeze blows, the hair sways like a lively golden ribbon, shimmering softly in the sunlight. Her hair is of excellent quality, as soft as silk, and feels incredibly smooth when you run your hands through it. Her pair of blue-green eyes are like deep pools of water, clear and mysterious, as if hiding countless unknown secrets. When she stares at you, her gaze seems to be able to penetrate your soul, making you involuntarily indulge in it. Her long, curled eyelashes are like two delicate little fans, and every time she blinks, it seems to fan the heart. Ellie's figure is even more stunning. She has a standard hourglass figure with a slender waist that is not even a handful, as if a light grip could break her in half. Her legs are long and straight, with beautiful and flowing lines, and whether she is wearing high heels or casual flat shoes, she can show off her unique charm. Her skin is as white as snow, smooth and delicate, as if it could burst with a single blow, as delicate as a baby's. In my eyes, Ellie is the embodiment of perfection. Her beauty and elegance have always fascinated me. Our married life was originally happy and full of laughter. However, Ellie has become a bit strange in recent times. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, thinking that it was just the result of her being tired from work. She would often sit on the sofa in the living room for hours, staring blankly out the window and spacing out. Her eyes were vacant, as if her soul had left her body. No matter how I called her, it would take her a while to respond. Sometimes I would call her to come and eat after I had cooked a meal, but she would just mechanically come and sit at the table, but show no interest in the food in front of her. She would just use her chopsticks to randomly stir the food in her bowl, her eyes wandering, her thoughts seemingly long gone. I tried to communicate with her, asking if she was worried about something, but she always put on a forced smile and said she was fine, telling me not to worry. Although I was suspicious, I chose to believe her, thinking that she might just need some time to adjust her state of mind. But as time passed, her strange behavior became more and more frequent, and a sense of unease gradually welled up in my heart. I always felt that something bad was about to happen, and this was just the beginning of a nightmare. That day was an extremely ordinary day. Since I had finished work early, I wanted to go home early and surprise Ellie. I opened the door with joy, but the sight inside the house instantly froze me in place. On the sofa in the living room sat a tall, strange man. He was wearing a well-tailored black suit, which looked expensive. His hair was thick and black, meticulously combed, and his face was cold, with an elusive coldness in his eyes. Eli stood aside, and when she saw me suddenly appear, a flash of panic crossed her face, the look of a child who has been caught doing something wrong. However, she quickly adjusted her emotions, forced a smile, and introduced me. "Honey, this is my colleague. He happened to be passing by today, so he came up to sit." I politely nodded to the man, but kept my eyes on him. He was sitting very casually, but exuding a sense of confidence and arrogance, as if he was very familiar with this home. His hand rested casually on the armrest of the sofa, and he wore an expensive watch on his wrist, exuding an air of luxury. I noticed that while I was talking to Ellie, the man's eyes kept wandering back to Ellie, with a trace of unnoticeable ambiguity in his eyes. Ellie seemed to sense his gaze, too, and she looked down from time to time, her face flushed. My doubts grew deeper and deeper, and this atmosphere made me feel very uncomfortable. I used the excuse of going to the kitchen to get some water, but in fact I wanted to calm down and think about how to deal with the situation. In the kitchen, I looked through the crack in the door and observed the two people in the living room. They were talking in low voices, and although I couldn't hear what they were saying, from their expressions and movements, it was clear that their relationship was more than just that of ordinary colleagues. When I returned to the living room with the water, the man stood up and looked at his watch and said, "It's getting late. I should go too." His voice was low and full of charm, but it made me feel inexplicably disgusted. Eli got up to see him to the door, and I followed. At the door, the man suddenly leaned close to Eli and whispered something, and Eli's face suddenly turned red. My anger was instantly ignited, but I suppressed it. After the man left, I looked at Ellie and asked, "Who is he? What is your relationship with him?" Ellie just shook her head and said I was overthinking it, that they were really just colleagues. But I knew that things were far from simple. This mysterious visitor had made my already uneasy heart even more panicked. I decided to keep a close eye on things and find out the truth behind it all. Ever since the mysterious man came, Ellie's behavior has become even more unpredictable. At first, I comforted myself by thinking that maybe I was being paranoid and that they really were just casual coworkers. But as the days passed, the signs of abnormality kept coming like a flood, and I could no longer deceive myself. From then on, Ellie began to go out frequently. She no longer reported her whereabouts to me before going out as she used to, but always looked hurried, as if she was avoiding something. Every time she went out, she would dress up elaborately, spending a long time selecting clothes and applying makeup. She would rummage through the closet for beautiful dresses that she hadn't worn in a long time, pair them with delicate jewelry, and carefully apply lipstick to make herself look radiant and attractive. Once, she stood in front of the mirror, repeatedly adjusting the position of her necklace, and her eyes revealed a look of expectation that I had not seen in her eyes for a long time. I couldn't help but ask her, "Where are you going today? Is there anything important?" She just replied lightly, "Meeting with girlfriends." But the twinkling eyes made my suspicions deepen. What made me even more uneasy was that every time she came back, she would smell of a strange man's perfume. The strong perfume mixed with her own light body odor, and it was particularly pungent. I tried to communicate with her and tactfully expressed my concerns, but she always impatiently interrupted me, saying that I was being unreasonable. One night, she came home very late. I sat on the sofa in the living room and waited for her. When she opened the door, I saw that her hair was a bit messy and there were a few wrinkles on her clothes. When she saw me, a flash of panic crossed her eyes, and then she turned around and went into the bedroom. I followed her and asked where she had been and who she had been with, but she just coldly replied, "None of your business," and then closed the bedroom door, leaving me alone outside. I discovered by chance that her so-called best friends were not with her at all. I called some of her friends, and they all said that they had not been hanging out with Ellie recently. At that moment, the unease in my heart was like a burst dam, and I could no longer control it. I knew that Ellie must be hiding something from me, and that there must be a huge secret behind her strange behavior. This secret is like a time bomb that could shatter our lives at any time. I secretly made up my mind that I must find out the truth, no matter what the consequences. Ever since I noticed all the strange things about Ellie, I have been filled with anxiety and doubt. I have become a little bit neurotic, always unable to stop watching her every move. This afternoon, Ellie, as usual, hurried out the door after getting dressed. As I watched her leave, my curiosity and worry grew like weeds. After much hesitation, I decided to take advantage of her absence to look for clues that would reveal her secret. I started by searching the living room, but apart from some daily necessities, I didn't find anything unusual. Then I went to the bedroom, and after scanning the room with my eyes, I finally settled on her dressing table. It was an exquisite white dressing table, with all kinds of cosmetic bottles and jars, as well as some of her beloved jewelry. I gently pulled open the dresser drawer, which contained neatly arranged miscellaneous items such as hairpins, hair ties, and sticky notes. Just as I was about to close the drawer, a small box caught my eye. It was placed on the bottom of the drawer and wrapped in a piece of pink velvet. My heart beat faster involuntarily, and an instinct told me that this box might contain something important. I carefully picked up the box and lifted the velvet cloth, revealing a strange device. It had an irregular shape, was silver gray in color, and its surface glowed with an unknown light, exuding a faint, eerie aura. There were a few buttons on the top of the device, each with a different color, and they flashed different colors from time to time. I was about to take a closer look at the device and try to figure out what it was for, when I suddenly heard familiar footsteps outside the door. My heart tightened, and I realized that Ellie had returned. I hurriedly tried to put the device back in place, But in my panic, I accidentally touched one of the buttons and it made a slight drip sound. By now, Ellie had opened the bedroom door. When she saw the device in my hand, her face instantly turned pale and her originally rosy lips lost their blood color. She rushed over, snatched the device from my hands, and her eyes were filled with fear and anger. "What are you doing? Who told you to mess with my things?" Her voice trembled a little, with a sternness she had never shown before. I tried to explain, but she didn't give me the chance. She turned around and held the device tightly in her arms, as if it were her most precious treasure. I looked at her, my confusion deepening. What was this strange device? And why was Ellie so nervous? What kind of secret was behind all this? And would I have the courage to uncover the layers of mystery and face the cruel truth that might come? I knew that this battle with the unknown had only just begun. Ellie's violent reaction made me even more convinced that there must be a huge secret behind this device. She clung to the device, her eyes filled with not only fear and anger, but also a hint of helplessness and struggle. I looked at her, my heart full of doubts and unwillingness, but she was unwilling to say another word. She just gave me a cold glance and then turned around and locked the device in a secret compartment deep in the closet. Despite her treatment, my determination to find out the truth became even stronger. After Ellie left the house, I started investigating again. After some thought, I felt that the key to the frequent outings might lie in the places she went. Recalling the unfamiliar perfume on her and the slightly messy appearance every time she came back, I guessed that she might often go to some entertainment places or more secluded private clubs. I decided to start with her social media and secretly check her phone. In her chat history, I found some vague clues. One of them was a person with no name, and the chat content was always very obscure, as if they were arranging a meeting place. Based on some keywords in the chat, I roughly deduced that the place they often went to might be an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. With a mixture of anxiety and anticipation, I drove to the abandoned factory in the night. When I arrived, it was silent all around, except for the eerie, crumbling buildings of the abandoned factory in the moonlight. I approached carefully and heard indistinct voices coming from inside. I held my breath and slowly crept closer in the direction of the sound, hiding behind an abandoned machine. I saw Ellie and the mysterious stranger standing in the middle of the factory, surrounded by some strange instruments, which seemed to be from the same series as the device I had found earlier. I heard the man say in a low voice, "The parasitic brain command has taken effect, and she is now completely under our control." Hearing this, my mind went blank, and the shock I felt was beyond words. It turned out that all of Ellie's unusual behavior was actually due to being controlled by this so-called parasitic brain command. I dared not make too much noise, but my body trembled slightly with anger and shock. I looked at Ellie, her eyes vacant, as if she had lost her soul, just mechanically obeying the man's commands. A strong urge welled up in my heart, and I wanted to rush out to save her, but reason told me that it was not yet time. I suppressed my grief and anger and quietly left the abandoned factory. At this point, I finally uncovered a corner of the truth, but the truth was so cruel. I knew that what I was about to face would be an even more difficult battle. I had to find a way to rescue Ellie, destroy this evil plot, and return our lives to normal. And along the way, I didn't know how many dangers and challenges awaited me. After sneaking out of the abandoned factory, my heart was in my throat, and I kept replaying Ellie's vacant eyes and the smug look on the strange man's face. I knew I had stepped into a dangerous vortex, but I had no choice but to save Ellie. When I got home, I tried to calm myself down and think about what to do next. But before I could figure anything out, I heard a rush of footsteps outside the door. My heart tightened, and an ominous feeling came over me. With a loud bang, the door was violently flung open and the mysterious stranger barged in, accompanied by a few fierce-looking henchmen. His eyes were as sharp as a hawk, staring coldly at me as if he wanted to see right through me. "I didn't think you were capable of finding the place," he said in a low, cold voice tinged with mockery. I pretended to be calm, looked him straight in the eye and asked, "What do you want?" "Just make Ellie normal again." The man sneered, took a few steps forward, and said, Normal again? She's fine the way she is. Just do as she tells you. Don't waste your energy. If you know what's good for you, you'll stay out of this, or—" He paused, and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. "Or you won't have a happy ending." I clenched my fists, my anger burning like a raging fire, but I knew I couldn't act impulsively at the moment. I glanced around at the several men around me, all of them burly and uninviting. I contemplated how I could get out of this unfavorable situation. "You are committing illegal acts, and I have already called the police." I tried to intimidate them with these words, but the man laughed dismissively. "Call the police? Do you think the police will believe you? Besides, when the police arrive, it's not certain that you'll still be alive." He then gave a wink to his men, and they slowly surrounded me. I subconsciously took a few steps back, until my back was against the wall. I looked around, looking for something I could use for self-defense. Suddenly, my eyes fell on a vase on a table nearby. I quickly reached out and grabbed the vase, holding it tightly in my hands, ready to defend myself against their attacks. "Don't resist. Just do as you're told, and maybe we'll let you live." The man stepped closer, and I could feel the intense pressure emanating from him. I gritted my teeth with only one thought in my mind. No matter what, I must not let them get away with this. I must find a way to save Ellie. But the reality was cruel and desperate. As they closed in on me, I gradually lost the ability to resist. The vase was knocked out of my hands, and I was forced to the ground, where I felt a sharp pain. I struggled to stand up, but was kicked several times. "This is just a small lesson for you, don't be presumptuous." The man looked down at me condescendingly, and then left with his men. I lay on the ground, looking at the ceiling, my heart full of resentment. But I knew that I couldn't just give up. Even if there was only a glimmer of hope, I would do my best to save Ellie and fight against this evil force to the end. After the gang left, I was alone on the cold floor. The pain in my body came in waves, and every breath was accompanied by a stabbing pain in my chest. I tried to struggle to sit up, but my limbs felt as heavy as lead, and every movement required a huge effort. I don't know how long it took, but in the distance I could faintly hear the sound of a police siren. The shrill sound was especially clear in the silence. A glimmer of hope arose in my heart. Could it be that the police had really arrived? But then I became worried. What if it wasn't the police, but the gang returning? As the siren got closer and closer, I was finally sure that the police had arrived. The door opened again and several policemen rushed in. They looked around warily. When they saw me lying on the ground, one of them quickly walked over to me, knelt down and asked with concern, "Are you okay? Are you badly hurt?" I endured the pain and told them the story in an intermittent manner. It turned out that before I followed Ellie to the abandoned factory, I already had a feeling that there might be danger, so I told my friend Tom about my discovery and the general location in advance, and told him to call the police immediately if I didn't hear from me for a long time. Tom found that I had not returned home for a long time and realized that something was wrong, so he didn't hesitate to call the police. The police officers listened to my account and their faces grew serious. They reassured me not to worry and that they would do their best to investigate the matter and bring the culprit to justice. Then, several police officers carefully helped me up and put me in an ambulance. On the way to the hospital, I looked out the window at the flashing police lights and had mixed feelings. Once I arrived at the hospital, the doctor immediately examined and treated me. I had multiple bruises and abrasions, and a few ribs were slightly broken, but fortunately, there was no danger to my life. Lying in the hospital bed, I looked at the ceiling, and the figure of Ellie kept popping up in my mind. I knew that although I had been rescued this time, the matter was far from over. The police questioned me in detail at the hospital and took a statement. They told me that they had sealed off and investigated the abandoned factory and were doing their best to track down the mysterious stranger and his men. I thanked the police and firmly told them that I must personally participate in the rescue of Ellie. I could not let her remain under the control of that evil, parasitic brain command. As I watched the sky outside my window gradually turn pale, I knew that a new day had begun. Although the road ahead was still full of unknowns and dangers, with the help of the police, Hope had been rekindled in my heart. I believed that as long as we did not give up, we would definitely find a way to save Ellie, completely destroy this evil plot, and get our lives back on track. And I was ready to face any challenge. Every minute and every second in the hospital seemed incredibly long. Although my physical injuries gradually improved under the doctor's careful treatment, my heart was always in a state of anxiety and I could not relax. Ellie's safety was like a heavy stone weighing me down, suffocating me. I followed the progress of the case every day, and as soon as the police had any news, I couldn't wait to ask. They told me that although the abandoned factory had been searched thoroughly, the mysterious device and related materials had been moved, and the strange man and his men had vanished without a trace. Hearing this news, I was full of disappointment, but I didn't give up. I knew that as long as we didn't stop looking, we would definitely find traces of them. Just when I was feeling desperate, things finally took a turn for the better. The police used technical means to track down a signal source related to the case. They speculated that the signal source was likely related to the parasitic brain command device that controlled Ellie. After getting this news, I was so excited that I almost jumped up and demanded to participate in this operation. After my repeated insistence, the police agreed to let me follow them to the location of the signal source. When we arrived at the location, we found it to be an abandoned warehouse hidden deep in the mountains. The surrounding area was uninhabited, and the silence was frightening. The police officers cautiously approached the warehouse, and I followed closely behind them, my heart beating faster and faster. When we entered the warehouse, the sight before us took our breath away. The warehouse was filled with all kinds of complex equipment, and there was a huge display screen flashing strange numbers and symbols. In the corner of the warehouse, I finally saw Ellie. She was tied to a chair, her eyes still vacant, but when she saw me, there seemed to be a flash of light in her eyes. I rushed over to her, desperate to untie her and hold her in my arms. "Ellie, wake up. I'm Jack. I'm here to save you," I said chokingly. At that moment, the police also found the mainframe in the warehouse that controlled the parasitic brain command. The experts quickly studied and cracked the mainframe, and after a lot of hard work, they finally managed to shut down the command. Ellie's eyes gradually regained their radiance, and she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Jack, what's wrong with me?" she asked weakly. I held her hand tightly and said, "It's okay. It's all over now." Watching Ellie gradually return to normal, I was filled with joy and hope. Although we still don't know how much more conspiracy is behind this evil organization, I believe that as long as we work together, we will be able to completely destroy them and bring sunshine back into our lives. Ellie's recovery is the first step towards victory, and I look forward to our return to the happy life we once had. After Ellie recovered, we were arranged by the police to undergo a series of interviews and investigations. Ellie tried her best to recall what happened during the period of being controlled. Although many of her memories were vague, she still tried her best to provide some clues to help the police further understand the situation of that evil organization. As the investigation progressed, the police gradually gained more information about the organization. It turned out that they were a secret scientific research group that tried to control others through this parasitic brain command technology to achieve ulterior motives, such as gaining wealth, power, and even delusional domination of the world. The members of this organization were widely distributed and had intricate relationships, so it was not easy to completely eradicate them. However, the police did not back down, and they intensified their pursuit, launching a comprehensive manhunt for the members of this organization. In the process, new clues were discovered one after another, and some important members were arrested one after another. Watching the police's efforts and results, Ellie and I were full of gratitude and confidence in the future. After a period of hard work, this evil organization was finally successfully dismantled, and all the main members were brought to justice. When we heard the news, Ellie and I embraced and wept. Over the past period of time, we have experienced so much pain and suffering, and now we have finally seen the dawn of victory. However, the scars from this experience cannot be easily erased. Ellie often wakes up in the middle of the night, her fear in her dreams leaving her covered in sweat. I know that she needs time to heal, to help her regain her confidence in life, I decided to take her away from this city full of memories. We sold our house, got rid of some unnecessary things, and set off on a new journey. We arrived in a quiet seaside town, where the air is fresh, the sun is warm, and people live simple and happy lives. We rented a small house near the beach, where we could hear the sound of the waves every day. Ellie started to learn to paint, and she used her paintbrush to depict this beautiful town and the hope in our hearts. I found a simple job that didn't pay much, but it was enough to get by. Together, we took walks by the beach, watched the sun rise and set, and tried the local food. As time passed, Ellie's smile grew wider and her eyes became more determined and confident. We rediscovered the joy of life and treasured each other more. This experience taught us that no matter how big the difficulties and challenges, as long as we support each other, we will be able to overcome everything. We believe that in this brand new place, we will start a brand new life, full of sunshine, happiness, and hope. With love and courage, we will write our own beautiful future.